Men that score for Rangers against the Celts tend not to be Celtic heroes, and this is even more true when it happens in a cup final. But there's one man certainly defies that. Despite his cup final slip-up, this player is a significant name in Celtic's history. Not only did he enjoy major success as a player, he's also a Lisbon Lion and a dentist. This is the story of Celtic's Jim Craig. To say the least, Craig took an unusual route to becoming a Celtic hero. He was born in Govan in 1943, in the midst of World War II. There's often a stereotype about footballers that they're talented on the pitch, but otherwise lacking intelligence. When it comes to Craig, this couldn't have been further from the truth. After attending St Gerard's School in Govan, he crossed the River Clyde to continue his education. This entailed becoming a Glasgow University student, working towards being a dentist, an activity that would define much of his life. At the same time as he was achieving academic excellence, Craig was also making a name for himself on the football pitch. He played schoolboy football and later turned out for the Glasgow University team. These performances brought him to the attention of Celtic scouts, and they wanted to bring him to Parkhead. But Craig had certain worries, not least about this getting in the way of his studies. As such, he initially rejected Celtic's approaches. As an intelligent man, Craig knew that football careers could be fleeting, and injuries were always a threat. In the 1960s, unlike nowadays, footballers did not earn exorbitant salaries. Therefore, it made sense to think of the long-term picture. However, his father had a big influence in changing these feelings. Craig's dad once told him that, "There's a lot of dentists, son, but not everyone gets the chance to play for Celtic." Thanks to this advice, a deal was reached. In 1963, Jim Craig signed for Celtic as an amateur. This meant he was on the boys' books, but could also complete his dental degree. He had to study by day, then train and revise his lessons at night. It was made more difficult by not having a car and having to travel everywhere by bus, meaning he was often late. This could make him unpopular with lots of people in football and healthcare. By early 1965, Jim Craig was ready to officially sign on at Celtic Park. This gave him the immediate experience of two different managers. At the start of '65, legendary player and manager Jimmy McGrory was departing the club, and he was soon replaced by Jock Stein. At first, Craig was part of the Celtic reserves before moving up to the senior squad. In October of that same year, Jim Craig first ran out as a player in the Celtic first team. The boys played go-ahead in the Cup Winners' Cup and claimed a 1-0 victory, winning 7-0 in aggregate. Celtic would go on to controversially lose to Liverpool at the semi-final stage. Whilst Jim Craig might have been disappointed at the eventual European outcome, this season was otherwise a huge success for him. Not only did he become an important first-team player, he was also part of the Celt's first league-winning team for 12 years. Now that he was in the first team, Craig has described the strange insights he picked up, including other players' pre-match routines. Some were particular about the order in which they put on their socks, whilst others would have a sip of brandy to steady their nerves. Jim Craig was now a very popular figure, although he wasn't generally known by this name, even to Jock Stein. A TV show at this time was called This Man Craig, and the lead actor was John Kearney. As such, Kearney became Craig's nickname. League success in 1966 opened up the door to Celtic's greatest ever season. In the summer of 1966, the club took part in an American tour that was an important bonding event for the squad, although Craig couldn't attend owing to his dental studies. Despite this, he was still a big part of the team through season 1966-67, and what a season it was. The boys swept aside all Scottish opponents, claiming the League, Scottish Cup, League Cup and Glasgow Cup. And then, of course, came Europe. Celtic overcame Zurich, Nantes, Vojvodina and Dukla Prague, setting up a date with Inter Milan. On the 25th of May 1967, the two sides faced off in Lisbon, and it started with a disaster for Jim Craig. Early in the game, he went to make a tackle in the box. Although there was minimal contact with an Inter player, the referee pointed to the penalty spot. In the years since, Craig has repeatedly said it was the wrong decision. It meant that the Celts were soon one down, and they faced the tough challenge of breaking through the hyper-defensive Italian team. At half-time, Kearney's teammates and manager backed him up and told him to make sure the second half changed things. And that's exactly what happened. Just after 60 minutes had elapsed, Craig played the ball into Tommy Gemmell, who smashed home the equaliser. Later on, Stevie Chalmers ensured that the Lisbon Lions were born. This tale of triumph and success marked the high point of Craig's time in football and at Celtic Park, although these experiences weren't reflective in his international career. He made only one Scotland appearance, coming in a 3-2 victory over Wales at Hampden in 1967. Given Scotland's general lack of success in this era, for instance, between 1958 and 1974 they failed to qualify for any of the World Cups, Craig once suggested they should simply have played the Lisbon Lions to boost their hopes. It's a logic with which it's hard to argue. In his 231 games for the boys, Jim Craig managed to find the net for Celtic on 6 occasions. His first came against Aberdeen in 1967, and his last helped the boys win a trophy. In this case, his was one of Celtic's 6 goals when the boys hammered Hibs 6-2 in the April 1969 League Cup final. Not everything always went well for Craig, and he was sent off on more than one occasion. In his first season, this ordering off came in the Soviet Union, following a fight with a Dynamo Kiev player. He even saw both men being escorted off by army guards. This sending off played a part in changing Celtic history. Up to this point, the Celtic board often made decisions about players and tactics. Chairman Robert Kelly was angry at Craig and stopped him playing, which was then seen to be a mistake. Jock Stein later told Craig that this had helped ensure that Stein was given more control and would not be overruled by the board. Another dismissal came against Rangers in 1969. Following a bad tackle on Willie Johnson, Craig left the field, but the Celts still held on for a 1-0 victory, en route to a 5th successive title. This wasn't the only bad luck that he had against Rangers. The 1970s saw Craig twice score for the Ibrox side against the Celts, and one of these came in a cup final. In February 1970, the Celts hosted Rangers in the Scottish Cup. It was a big game with a glamorous audience, including Hollywood stars being in attendance. They watched as a Jim Craig own goal put the Celts behind after only 5 minutes, although the boys rallied to claim a 3-1 victory. 3 months after this, the Celts played in their 2nd European Cup final. However, this time Kearney was not on the pitch. Instead, he was a substitute as the boys lost to Feyenoord. Celtic's Dentist was beginning to play less often, although he was still an important part of the squad. The following year, Craig's unfortunate scoring streak for Rangers continued. Celtic met the Light Blues in the 1971 Scottish Cup final. In a replay, the Celts had gained a strong advantage thanks to 2 goals in a minute from Lou Macari and Harry Hood. However, in the second half, Jim Craig knocked into his own net. Once again though, it mattered not as the Celts still triumphed. On one occasion, Jim Craig also proved he was the cleverest player in the Celtic team. The boys famously won the TV sports show Quiz Ball in 1970, and as they stormed to victory in the final, it was Craig who answered the vast majority of the team's questions. Jim Craig had enjoyed a remarkable run of success in his time in green and white hoops. However, his 1971 final own goal came when he had only 1 year left at the club. By 1972, his time at Celtic was over, and a new generation of players was coming into being. Jim Craig's final game was a fantastic send-off. In 1972, the boys enjoyed their biggest ever Scottish Cup final win as Hibs were hammered 6-1. In a fitting tribute to the significant role he'd played in green and white, Craig set up 2 of the goals. The eventual trophy haul he claimed was extremely impressive. As well as the 1967 European Cup, he also helped the Celts to 7 league titles, 4 Scottish Cups and 3 League Cups. The only question was whether, aged 29, he left the club too soon. Whether or not it was the right choice is up for debate, but it wasn't the end of Craig's time in football. After leaving Celtic, he emigrated to South Africa, where he turned out for Hellenic. However, He didn't settle well in this new continent and soon returned to Britain, where he made some appearances for Sheffield Wednesday. In 1974, there was even a short spell in Ireland as player-manager for Waterford. Soon though, Craig was back in full-time dentistry, the career with which he had been connected since even before becoming a footballer. However, this wasn't his only post-football activity. He featured regularly on TV and radio shows. In the 1980s, he was one of the presenters of Sports Scene and appeared on other shows as well. However, his BBC connection came to an end in the early 1990s in relation to another notable Celtic event. The takeover by Fergus McCann in 1994 is well remembered by fans. Craig knew the board very well because he was married to Elizabeth Farrell, daughter of board member and shareholder Jimmy Farrell. Before McCann's takeover, Jim Craig was involved in efforts to negotiate new leadership at Celtic. However, this saw him being removed from working at BBC Radio Scotland due to claims he wasn't impartial. It certainly didn't dissuade him from ensuring that Celtic's old board were eventually brought down. He continued to be part of these campaigns, including speaking at Celts for Change events, and, like the rest of the Celtic support, he cheered as the takeover went ahead. After this, Craig had various other club connections. He's particularly interested in Celtic history. As well as publishing several online articles, he has also written different books telling tales of Celtic and Scottish football, as well as supporting the work of the Celtic Grave Society. In 2019, he was appointed as an official Celtic ambassador. At various times, Kearney has been part of the club's celebrations, including unfurling the league flag in 2024, and once bringing the league trophy to Celtic Park via a River Clyde speedboat. Jim Craig's part in Celtic's greatest ever day in 1967 is more than enough to ensure his immortality in the club's record books. However, his wider contribution to the boys, spanning decades since he first joined the Hoops, helped cement this reputation. An important and intelligent player who was at the heart of so much Celtic success, the dentist Jim Craig will always be cheered by Celtic supporters, despite those goals for Rangers. If you want to learn more about Celtic history, follow Hail Hail History on Twitter X and Blue Sky. You can also take part in free Celtic history walking tours. Visit celticwalkingtours.wordpress.com for more information.